Hey, good people, this is Red. I just want to say that this winter has been already phenomenal. Um, and this Christmas and this coming New Year, fantastic. I do have a YouTube channel called In the Way with Miss Red 316, or else it's Miss Red 316 in the Way. Either way, it's a play on words because when I've worked with kids most of my life and they call me Miss Red, and so many people misread what I say. And in the way, I'm trying to walk in the Christian way, following Christ, pursuing Christ, but I'm also most of the time in the way. Anyway, I just wanted to give a little insight to something because I think as believers, we we don't want to read the Bible a lot of times because we get bored with it or we think that it's too tasking or whatever. I just got through reading Leviticus and Numbers, and now I'm in Deuteronomy, and a lot of it is repetitive, but a lot of it, Deuteronomy is actually a more detailed explanation of the Exodus. Leviticus is a lot about laws and the building of the tabernacle. Well, I think as believers, as followers of Christ, we forget that it was God's intent from the beginning to dwell with his people. And in order to do that, by definition, God can only be one. Ultimate in power, ultimate in knowledge, and everywhere all the time. So he's all powerful, ever present, and everywhere all the time. And he's omnibenevolent, which means that everything he does is for the good of his creation, even though it doesn't look like it. We can't save our children from the pain they're going to experience in life, but we have to allow those things so that it builds character and draws them closer in relationship to us through discipline and instruction. Anyway, so as I'm going through Leviticus, what I become enamored with is, like, I know God is holy, but his character being perfectly holy and righteous has demands, and that is perfection. Perfection is what is required to enter heaven. We, as humans, cannot maintain perfection. So God, through Leviticus, through his commands and his establishment of his dwelling place among the people, when he gave the blueprints and the instruction for his tabernacle, his dwelling among the Israelites, he gave very specific instructions on how it was to be built, what materials it was to be built with, and how it was to be set up, and who approached him and how they would approach him. Now, if you start to read all this, you get overwhelmed and you think, how boring is this, and how traumatic, and why do I care? But if you realize that holy God, his character has demands, and all these demands are, like, any priest who entered the temple had to be properly dressed, properly bathed, properly repentant, and he couldn't have any physical or mental abnormalities. No missing fingers, no short limbs, no, handicap, nothing. Like me and my hand, that's a neurological disorder. If I was a man and an Israelite, I could not have been a priest because I am imperfect in form. And the demands of the priesthood was one thing. The demands of the sacrifice were entirely different. The sacrifices had to be perfect, and that there were no blemishes. So if it's a lamb, not one hair could be miscolored, not one limb could be longer than the other, and when you start to think about how his character, his heart is for mercy. His character demands justice from an imperfect human race. And because his character demands justice and perfection, like that's what had to be the case in approaching him. And even the priests had tassels on their robes because if they got killed for inappropriately approaching God, they had to be dragged out. And what really hit me was that the Jewish people had to keep these laws. They had to keep the Ten Commandments, and they had to keep the laws for sacrifice and the tabernacle in order to be accepted by God. And we miss that that's what Christmas is about, that we have no means of approaching holy, perfect God on our own, because we are way, way short of holiness, and we are way, way short of perfection. And it is not possible for us to keep even this much of the law. He gave the Israelites 10 commandments, and within the first couple of minutes, they had broken the first one. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. And God says repeatedly, I am God, and there is no other. I am Yahweh. There is no one else. There are no other gods. I mean, repeatedly, he tells them there is no one else. And we can't even get the first commandment right. But it made me appreciate so much more the absolute lengths that divine, heavenly perfection took it upon himself to step into creation in human form so that he could fulfill every perfect law and command that had been established. I promise you, there's mountains of stuff that were demanded and that are still demanded. But because Christ came we celebrate Christmas, but because Christ came in human form, he said, I have come to fulfill the law and the prophets. All of the law, not part of it, not some of it, not a little of it, all of it. Only God can fulfill the demands of God. And when you realize just how much his character demands, but then how much, even from Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, when man fell, even from before that, God had a plan to step into creation and be that provision that he knows we cannot be. And that's what Christmas is about, reconciling us, imperfect humanity that he created, that he wants to dwell with permanently, eternally, forever, and intimately. And the act of coming as a human from perfect heaven, being surrounded by holiness, perfection, and beauty all the time, and coming into an imperfect, messed up, screwed up, ugly world where the thoughts of man's hearts are continuously evil, he says in Genesis chapter 6. That blows my mind, because the demands that he makes have been provided within himself. So it's like, I think that people who don't know Christ see a tyrannical God who has demands. Yes, his holy, perfect character has demands, but they don't see the loving, compassionate, merciful God who, for the sake of his creation, stepped into it and took on every law, every command, and every sin within himself so that he could be the perfect sacrifice to atone for us and reconcile us to holy God. So now that God himself has provided the sacrifice for God's justice, I have had righteousness applied to me by the mercy and grace of the God who came to save me. And now I've been reconciled eternally with him. So if you think for a minute that God is tyrannical and murderous and his holiness demands that evil be wiped out and righteousness be established. But he's also made it possible for righteousness to be applied through the person and the work of Jesus Christ, who came, lived, died, and rose again for our sake. So if you don't know Christ today, and you don't know God, he is not a vengeful God. He is a just and righteous God who granted us mercy and love in his coming and wants a relationship with you. So consider it in the new year. And amazing the lengths that God has gone to make sure that we can know him personally.